adolescent guard was extremely tired, his body teetering on fatigue-induced collapse, and he knew he couldn't possibly last much longer. Struggling to keep his burning eyes open, the soldier glanced around the dark and quiet antechamber, eyeing his counterpart across the open doorway leading to Robert's inner sanctum beyond. The room itself was quite small, no larger than 10 feet in diameter, a simple transition between the spiral staircase ahead and Robert's throne room. Acting as nothing more than a ceremonial guard deep within the granite tower, the adolescent assured himself nothing would happen if he rested, just for a moment, and leaned backward against the polished stone wall in order to close his stinging, battle-weary eyes. Times had not always been like this, thought the guard, and he yearned for the days when the city had no enemy, when terror was a thing unknown to most of its citizens, when he himself was free to laugh and play, to wander through fields of grass and flowers without the constant reminder of death and despair. Although still more a child than a man, the guard was now a Josephine soldier, recruited to replace the many heroes who had recently given their lives in protection and fortification of the city, and he could only dream that the Benzar attacks would soon end. The mind of the young defender continued to drift, and soon he could hear nothing of the world around him, nor feel anything as blissful sleep released his subconscious and allowed him sanctuary from painful reality. He thus had no way of hearing the approaching footsteps, or the subsequent voices locked deeply in serious conversation. The young guard was doomed and didn't even know it. Opposite the two guards in the corner of the stone antechamber stood a small but elaborate spiral staircase, which allowed access to various levels throughout the tower. As the footsteps became louder, the female soldier standing opposite the sleeping defender recognized the voices of Robert and Gepenor, and turned to rouse her friend. But she too had been bordering on sleep. The arrival of the two most powerful figures in all of Parappa had caught her by surprise as well, and the young woman realized there was no time to awaken the other guard. So he could be the one attacking us over the last year, Robert was saying as he stepped off the stone staircase and into the antechamber itself, headed for his guarded palace room 10 feet beyond. But is he the one? Is he the one? Facts speak for themselves, Gepenor puffed, the husky religious leader of the city gasping for breath from the climb. His own father left us a message the night they escaped, the night Sandras was put to the torch, that they went to become ultimates and would one day return to exact their vengeance upon us for executing Sandras. A season later, the Benzars began attacking us again. The timing implicates Redfern perfectly. Robert was dressed in a more casual manner, his loose shirt, regal vest, and well-tailored pants just as colorful as much of the city beyond. Brilliant attire for a brilliant hero. Yet the Lord felt anything but special. And though once quite handsome, the horrors and personal hardship he had suffered during the last year were clearly etched in his face. Why come back, alone and unprotected like that? It doesn't make sense.
This city and all the problems, the angel of death and her legions of Benzars, the killing, the robbery, all the injustice, the circle, refusing to help. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Suddenly, Robert stopped, just outside his own palace room, his eyes transfixed upon the dozing guard. Nor noticed this as well, but thought little of the situation, fully aware that the palace guards were more for image than protection. But for Robert, this was yet one more thing that was going wrong, another problem of thousands that made him wish He had never accepted the lordship after the overthrow of Sandris. Instantly irate to the point of insanity, the king unsheathed his gleaming doom sword and stepped forward to slay the errant guard without mercy or compassion. In shock and revulsion by the sudden attack, Gepenor reached out and grabbed Robert's arm, trying to prevent the senseless murder. "In the name of Sisla, my lord, remember the code!" Robert turned to the Supreme Healer Priest as if Nora was now the intended target. The misery suffered by the Lord was quite pronounced, and the king narrowed his eyes and ground his teeth in bitter frustration. A battle of wills ensued between the Lord and the priest, and a few tense moments passed before Redford recovered his conscience and conceded to Gepenor. The Lord of Josephine then slid his formidable doom sword back into its intricate wooden scabbard, the harrowing moment apparently over. Still needing to vent his anger, however, Robert stepped to the sleeping soldier and delivered a punch to the stomach so aggressive that Nora would later come to learn several hours were needed to magically repair the internal damage done by the blow. The guard buckled over like a twig snapped in two, desperately gasping for air. Robert grabbed the wounded soldier and threw him to the floor, not caring whether the young man would live or die. The guard hit the ground hard and quickly turned around, not realizing at first that the vicious assailant was his own lord and protector. "Sleeping at your post is punishable by death," Robert sneered, as if his actions were truly justified. "There won't be a second time." The other guard swallowed hard as she watched her comrade simply shake his head, grasping the situation and indeed lucky to be alive. Unreasonably angry, Robert turned back toward the doorway leading to his personal chamber and screamed for Gepenor to follow, wanting to leave the scene of the altercation as quickly as possible. Nora looked at the bleeding guard and told him to report to the Sislan church for medical attention, then followed his hand-picked lord, deeply concerned with Robert's deteriorating sanity. The two leaders entered the governmental chamber, a semicircular room 30 feet in breadth and shrouded in colorful drapes and linens. Here, the ruling laws and policies of the land were discussed and recorded, an official meeting place for those with power and authority within Josephine. Indeed, the chamber bore witness to the past as well as recent stately decisions, of times when Sandris held power, and all her predecessors back to the time when Sisla herself had created the country and arranged for one of her many wizard generals to control the land. Hundreds of stories lay within the magically crafted red marble, a silent record of hope, encouragement, change, treachery, and doom.
Josephine, lands of Irama.
Resist the age of damnation, colonized by goodly humans.
Rich history.
Sandra serves change into the code of the land.
Hated by the church. Rebel, circle.
Dre, executed. Robert now rules.
Regal and ornate, Robert's obsidian throne rested opposite the doorway along the far wall, draped in a rainbow of translucent satins and polished to reflect all incoming light. Robert recognized the wizard Vel standing next to the throne, apparently returned from his desperate trip to Sparklewood. But the king was still full of anger from the encounter with the sleepy guard and continued complaining to Gepenor. "Damn it, Nor! Damn it all! You said the lordship wouldn't be easy, but this is unbearable. I can't go on like this." Perhaps it's a test, maybe by Sisla herself. But there's no purpose to it all. Robert replied, convinced that the presumed deity had little to do with the problems plaguing the city. The attacks, the murder, all the destruction. There's a purpose in everything, commanded Nor, relying on part of his own religious training. And purpose always leads to justice. I think we already know who's been ravaging our city. No one knows the true angel of death, Vel interrupted. Nor is the inner circle going to offer its help. You're both on your own. Having reached the ancient wizard, both Robert and Gepenor were stunned by the comment, and their hearts sank even lower. Turning back around to sit himself down, Robert's question was quick and to the point. You've consulted with the circle, then? I have, Vel returned, more concerned with the reaction of the healer priest than with the Lord. And I bear even graver news. Someone of intense evil and corruption resides within this city, a being plotting the very overthrow of the circle, and I suspect the entire Sislan utopia. Who would dare even consider such a thing? Robert asked, surprised that the situation could be even worse. And here, within the heart of Parappa? We shall find this wicked creature and banish him to Gemkor, Gepenor snorted, continuing the charade that he cared about the preservation of the inner circle. I shall initiate the search at once. Am I to understand, then, that the circle will continue to punish us? Robert whispered, as if he truly didn't want to ask the question.
Yes, to Gemkor, a magical prison encased within the living ruby. None have ever returned from its imprisonment, and yet no life is taken in accordance with the code. Gemkor is the answer.
I certainly didn't think things could get even worse. But the news from Vel made my heart sink and my stomach turn. I began to wish Vel hadn't have saved me during the last Benzar attack.
The disappointed glance of Vel more than answered the query, prompting Nor to speak his mind, surprisingly assured of his personal verdict against Redfern. My lord, we've just captured the Angel of Death. That must be why the Circle detected such evil within our city. Redfern must be taken to Drevdar and cast into Gemkor at once for his crimes. Supreme One, Vel began, certain that Redfern was not who Gepenor wanted him to be. I truly doubt this wizard you've imprisoned is the evil you're looking for. Are you sure? Robert asked, desperate to find an answer to the problems of Josephine. How do you know? Yes, what makes you so all-knowing all the time? Questioned Gepenor, his customary cynicism for Vel displayed once again. Vel turned to the spiritual leader with old, cynical eyes, tired of trying to uphold goodly justice within the world. The corruption detected here within Parappa couldn't possibly emanate from one as young as this Redfern you've wrongly imprisoned. No one so young could ever rise to challenge the inner circle. And why not? Demanded the priest, his anger against the circle beginning to betray his true feelings. The inner circle no longer possesses the great power it once did, and has been reduced to a group of old, bickering fools. Perhaps Redfern is much stronger than you think.
Tired. So tired. The world is slowly dying and I can't seem to stop it. I'm doing all I can, but there are just so many problems for me to solve. If only I could just walk away from all of this.
Vel drew a deep, painful breath before making his reply. Your words border on treason, Supreme One. The Circle has always sought to righteously maintain the Sicilian utopia, even if you can't understand their means. And they will forever continue to protect Marigo with integrity and honor. Then why are they choosing to ignore us? Does the Circle simply want Josephine destroyed? Robert turned to Vel, about to ask the same question. The old wizard again sighed, embarrassed with his conclusion. This government showed it could not be trusted when Sandris was executed without authority from the Circle. And now that someone residing within Josephine is actually plotting the destruction of the Circle, who can blame them for their outrage? I'm afraid there will be no help from them for quite a while.
The old fat fool is right. The inner circle is doomed to failure. The Sicilian utopia is quickly coming to an end. And I will live to see all of America under my rule one day.
The inner circle actually originated the Sicilian Church. Yet now I am ashamed to even be associated with those old, bickering fools. All we have done here in Josephine was ensure our own survival and our way of life. It's the circle that should be destroyed, not us.
Silence filled the chamber, the news not unexpected but still just as painful. Gepinor appeared the moment and made his reply rather quietly. Sandris deserved what happened to her, and it's not our fault Redfern decided to return. I'm telling you, as the spiritual leader of the Sicilian Church here in Josephine, we must quickly punish Redfern for what he's done. Vel, do you have actual proof that this Redfern character isn't the angel of death? Robert queried, the Lord feeling the intense pressure and scrutiny of the healer priest. My lord, I know nothing of him, but if his power could rival the Circle, we would certainly know. It is common knowledge he was the first guard of Sandris and left with his father to escape justice, blasted Gepinor, suspecting that Vel was trying to protect a fellow wizard. The wizard bears a great deal of hate, and that's what it takes to make and control Benzars. Vel nodded, fully aware of the strong but utterly corrupt Magicka needed to strip the living of their souls and transform them into animate slaves. And what's this about some spirit accompanying the wizard? Robert questioned further. I've never heard of a spirit joining the company of mortals, especially one of such lowly status. Both Vel and Gepinor seemed to be at a loss regarding Ellen, and offered no explanation. Robert carefully considered the situation, leaning back into his throne to ponder, as he had done so many times in the recent past. Several long moments passed before the Lord decided on a definitive course of action. Vel, I've never known you to be wrong, Robert said with surprising calm and assurance. But I must know for sure. Supreme One, have Redfern brought to me at once.
While it does take tremendous Magicka to strip the living of their souls, it takes a strong emotion, a sheer need to do the unthinkable, to control another's life for eternity. It takes the convictions of a madman.
I've already sent for him, my lord, replied Nor, a hint of contempt contained in the corner of his smile. One step ahead of me as usual, Robert replied, his glance now fixed on the attractive skyline revealed by a nearby window. Gepinor grinned, confirming his dominance over the Lord and causing Vel to sigh with sadness and mistrust. Wishing for a breath of fresh air, Robert casually stepped to the open window, not noticing the large gray rat that scurried from the window and down along the growing vines of the outer tower wall. Nearly 50 feet above the ground, the rodent hurried down the secure stems and bright summer leaves of the plant, reaching the ground scant moments later and continuing along the adjacent street, attracting little attention from the hundreds of townsfolk rebuilding from the devastating Benzar attacks 3 nights before. The peculiar rodent waddled its way to a grand stone building and waited until no one was coming before scurrying up the smooth stairway and through the doorway of the building's entrance. The place apparently empty, the slinking creature crawled into the library deliberately, passing through the vast central chamber containing the written word of the city before finding a tiny reading room far from potential users of the building. The empty room cloaked in shadow, the rat finally came to a stop and fell over on its side as if it were dead. Tremendous heat began to waft from the rodent's skin. Then the creature slowly transformed, fur becoming lavender skin and mammal bone twisting into something humanoid. Soon a Gurak lay where the rat had been, fully clothed and quite aware of his surroundings. Rising to his feet, the Gurak stood just over 4 feet in height and appeared hunched over as if he were somewhat old. His frail lungs strained from the intense spell he had just cast, lungs already tired from a lifetime of abuse and bitter cold, and his pale lavender skin was smooth with younger relative age. Several tattoos were etched across the cheek and forehead of the Gurak, and his short brown hair sat like an adornment upon his abnormally large head. Aware that his kind was strictly forbidden within such an important public structure, the Gurak made sure the central chamber was empty before stealing back into the room, his movements surprisingly quick and agile.
I am Chaos. A name that suits me just fine. As you can see, I'm a Gurak and not fondly welcomed within Sislan society. In fact, they would have sent me to Gemcore had I been caught within the library.
The large reference section beyond was 30 feet to one side and contained several wooden tables and chairs atop a cold stone floor. The Gurak quickly made his way there, intent upon learning more about something within the city. Passing by dozens of supported shelves containing hundreds of thin slabs of slate, the slinking humanoid found the correct general area and scanned the various books, each piece of smooth stone measuring a foot to a side and 1/4 inch in width. The records had been perfectly carved and titled, through powerful Majika, the Gurak knew, and he had little trouble locating the section regarding the family tree of Redfern. Glancing back and forth again to ensure his privacy, the Gurak grabbed the perfect slab of rock and prepared himself for the magical transfer of information. Pressing his hand against the stone and concentrating, the entire known history of Redfern's family came rushing into the mind of the Gurak like a deluge filling a void. Within moments, all there was to know about Redfern's ancestry was known to the Gurak, and he quickly replaced the magical slate before retreating from the library shelf and back into the shadows of the city.
Redfern, son of Rex, mother unknown, born within Gentleman, 28 years of age, last seen dead in Fortune Maria, considered a possible alias to the Angel of Death, possible Trojan heritage.
Throm peered down into the tiny window from outside the secured prison. bumped and tugged by the large crowd of bitter townspeople around him as he scanned the cell below for Redfern, needing to find the man responsible for so much misery and death. A wild man with no heart, Throm had lost his entire family and meaning in life during one of the first Benzar attacks, and now possessed so much anger and hatred that his soul was barely human, a pathetic shell of a man much more aligned with death than with life. Indeed, he had come to the city's jail in order to locate and kill Redfern outright, if only he could reach the incarcerated young man.
That's right. I beat Throm. And I lost everything to that heartless monster, the one who calls himself Redfern. All I wanted was revenge, to snap his hideous neck, to inflict as much pain to him as his Benzars did to me. I wanted Redfern destroyed.
But like the other bitter victims who came to see Redfern and do him hard, the rigid structure of the small jail prevented any threat of a public lynching, and all the malevolent crowd could do was chant and shout for the wizard's quick execution. Helping to stir up the protest himself, Throm finally spotted the sorcerer in his dingy cell below and spat at him, gripping the stone bars of the tiny window with hands equally ready to strangle. Hearing the rage outside and fearful for his life, Redfern avoided the spittle and stepped to the far corner away from the window, sitting down moments later to lament his current situation. Looking around the tiny chamber, the stunned hero could see that the cell had certainly housed its share of criminals over the last few weeks, for the straw blanketing the floor was dirty, crushed, and rotting in the musty room. Muddy tracks lay everywhere beneath the straw, and another corner contained wooden buckets holding substances the wizard didn't want to know about. With little else to do but wait, Redfern turned back to the tiny window and watched as more obnoxious townsmen stepped past, their shadows dancing on the immense stone door across from him, the same door that offered the only way out of the dreary place. The light also stabbed at Ellen's nearly transparent form from time to time as she cowered near the door, the bizarre young woman apparently determined to stay with her newfound friend. His mind drifting, Redfern thought about the homecoming he knew he deserved, the opportunity for honor and reward that was now lost, and his need to be respected by the community of his birth. He had been through hell the last few years, struggling to maintain himself under the code with a father who sought to destroy it. And again, Redfern remembered the many terrible things he had been forced to watch, sometimes even participate in, because of the wickedness and corruption that consumed his only surviving parent. But now he had been reborn, blessed with tremendous power and ability, and he wanted only to be recognized and complimented for his faith and commitment, accolades that would have to wait until the present situation was resolved.
Never alive and follow me. Shall forever be controlled by you.
No, Father, I can't.
2 hours had passed since his capture and imprisonment, yet no one had come to even explain the supposed nature of his crimes. So Redfern finally stood to his feet, his arms still tied from behind with the Jika cord, and stepped to the stone door. "Hey, guards!" the young wizard shouted in anger over the chanting of the rebellious crowd beyond. "I demand to see someone with authority, now!" Hewn from the same rock as the walls of the cell, the wide stone door was nearly an entire foot thick, and so required the strength of several strong men to push it aside. Hearing no response, Redfern repeated his demand, and again was met with irritating silence. The bewildered hero then noticed Ellen standing before him, waving to attract his attention. She pointed to the window above and behind them. Turning toward the tiny opening, Redfern could see several townsfolk peering in, one of them Throm, their astonishment and anger quite obvious. Several small stones came crashing into the cell, and Redfern jumped away, retreating to the wall across from the heavy door. Ellen then stepped into the light, her ghostly form sending shivers down the spines of the small mob and quickly chasing them away from the window. The strange young woman finally turned back to Redfern, the pair finding the heart to exchange fleeting smiles despite their grim circumstances.
There did seem to be some advantages to my condition. I think people saw me as some sort of ghost, and some people would even run from me in terror. I certainly wasn't happy, but at least I could help Redfern in some small way.
A muffled crunch broke the silence, causing Redfern and Ellen to turn back toward the stone door as it began sliding along the outside wall. Watching the massive block being dragged slowly with the combined might of several Josephine soldiers, Redfern stepped to the center of the dismal cell, Ellen directly behind him. A bright light spilled into the darkened cell, causing a glow to appear within the doorway. Peering into the area, the wizard spied a shorter central figure standing defiantly in the light as the door opened just enough to allow entry. The guard stepped away, and then the central figure, his silhouette black and featureless in the light, cautiously stepped forward and approached Redfern. "Hello, Redfern, I must say," commented the figure as he strolled into the cell, a great smile across his face. The two immediately recognized each other as longtime friends, and their embrace was tight and emotional. Redfern had known Sertan for several years, first as a mentor and then as a trusted and respected friend. A Pesserden of the world, Sertan could potentially live forever, and his features made the free-spirited humanoid appear even younger than Redfern, although he was at least 3 times as old. Sertan was truly a unique individual, dressed in colorful and outlandish clothes, a tasteful combination of reds, greens, and golds. Several belts crisscrossed and interlaced his clothing, with small pouches fastened to many of them. A true adventurer of Mariga, Sertan needed many things to ensure his survival, and the pouches acted as convenient storage places for the Pesserden. Most alluring were his narrow silver eyes and neatly trimmed beard, which helped distinguish Sertan as the race he was. Redfern had always been able to draw hope and encouragement from those slender eyes, and this time would be no exception.
I must say, my name is Sertan, and I'm a Pesserden from the Pinard Forest, far to the northeast. I'm an adventurer of Mariga, and my travels have taken me all over the continent. For now, I'm a soldier within the tattered Josephine army, but I never stay in any one place for long.
The embrace over much sooner than he wished. Redfern finally stepped back but continued to grin, so very happy to see a friendly face again. "Sertan, my old friend, you haven't changed at all. I must say, news of your return is all over town. How are you, my friend?" "I'm fine," Redfern responded, having a difficult time keeping his apprehension in check. "What's going on? There's a Vegual around the city. Benzars are running around again, and someone thinks I'm a criminal. Tell me." "I must say," replied Sertan, his eyes momentarily drawn to the tiny window above, "you've chosen a poor time to come home. We've been under constant attack for a year now, and, well, I must say, many of the citizens blame you for the Benzars." "Me? Whatever for?" I must say the word is not good for you, my friend. The night you and your father escaped, the night Sandras was put to the torch, people say you were the first guard of Sandras and escaped with your father to become ultimates, in the hopes of one day avenging her death. While I remember your father as a mean, corrupt man, rumors confuse you with him, and now many want to believe you're the angel of death come back to destroy Josephine. By thunder! Redfern exclaimed, the situation like a terrible dream. The first guard? Me? I didn't even know the Benzars had returned until just a few days ago. I must say, no need to defend yourself around me. So, where is your father? Where he belongs, Redfern hurriedly replied, his anger quite pronounced. With no explanation forthcoming, Sertan simply shrugged his shoulders and looked back at Redfern with a warm smile, their old friendship lending support to the troubled wizard. Well, my friend, I'm sure you're innocent, Sertan stated, convinced of Redfern's personal honor. But there is an entire city out there who believes you're guilty, or at least wants to believe. I wouldn't stay here if I were you. This wasn't right, Redfern thought, to be accused of something so horrific, especially in light of his new powers. Indeed, the people of Josephine had no right to blame their troubles on him, especially when he had come all the way back to Parappa with the intention of helping the beleaguered nation. There was nothing he could do at the moment, however, so Redfern decided to change the subject. So, what about you? Redfern quietly returned. Been keeping yourself out of trouble? I must say, I'm a soldier of Josephine now, the Pesserden grinned, pointing to the various decorations across his left arm that signified him as an actual officer within the local corps. With most of the officers gone, I volunteered to help. You? A soldier? That must be very dull for you. Not really, Sertan grinned. The Benzars attack quite often now, so it keeps me busy. Hey, I wouldn't have been able to see you if I weren't part of the army here. The wizard raised his eyebrows and grinned in agreement.
Understand, I love and live for adventure, so I wasn't planning to stay in Josephine for very long. But soon after I met Redfern, I helped repel the initial Benzar attacks. And a year later I found myself back within Josephine, just in time to help with the more recent invasions.
Ellen then stepped toward the young wizard from out of the shadows, quite shy but intrigued with the Pesserden. Sertan appeared equally as curious, displaying a perfect set of white teeth as he noticed the ghostly woman. I must say, you are a spirit. No, I don't think so, Redfern interjected after a long look by Sertan. I think she's still mortal, but doesn't speak her tongue and obviously needs a great deal of help. Sertan glanced at Redfern, then reached out and slowly pushed his ageless hand through Ellen's body, astonished by the result. The young woman simply smiled, flattered by Sertan's look of both concern and admiration. The Pesserden grinned and introduced himself to Ellen before turning back to his old friend. I must say, you always wanted to become a wizard. You are now reborn? Redfern nodded his head, quite proud of the accomplishment. So help her, change her, give her the gift of speech. I tried, but I don't know how, came the honest reply. She's quite beyond my ability. Out of the corner of his eye, Sertan then noticed several guards approaching from Robert's tower, and realized that the captured wizard was being summoned by Robert himself. A much greater friend to Redfern than to the Josephine army, the Pesserden quickly turned back to the wizard, a rebellious smirk racing across his boyish face. I must say they're coming for you, so why don't we escape? I'll help you. Now, wouldn't that be an adventure?
I must say, a real spirit of Mariga. She looks human. I wonder what honorable and altruistic things she did to achieve spirithood. I wonder if I've got what it takes to become a spirit someday.
Sertan's eyes were glowing with the thought of adventure, a spark Redfern had seen several times in the past and remembered well. Pesterton was willing to make an adventure out of anything. Indeed, life itself seemed nothing more than one grand adventure to Sertan, and Redfern could only smile regarding his friend's spirited attitude. "I can't use my Majika with this thing on," Redfern finally chuckled, referring to the Jika cord still tightly wrapped around his hands behind his back. "Besides, you'd have too much fun now, wouldn't you? Always in my blood. I don't doubt it." The two men smiled again, the bond between them strong and obvious.
Oh, Sertan, you just can't get enough adventure, can you? Sorry, my friend, but we'll resolve this my way. I haven't forgotten the trouble you've gotten me into with your little adventures right here in Josephine.
"Come on, Redfern, let's go," barked one of the guards, his command cold and impassionate. Sertan watched his friend's smile quickly fade away and positioned himself directly between the wizard and the soldiers. "I must say, I'll lead the way." Bowing to his superior, the guard moved aside as Sertan motioned for Redfern and Ellen to follow, the three guards quickly taking positions around the arrested pair to prevent any possible escape. Sertan then led the small group out of the jail cell and up the stairs to the surface beyond. When they came outdoors, the angry mob swarmed forward to rend the wizard limb from limb, dozens of hopeless citizens needing a scapegoat to crucify and destroy. Sertan expertly drew his slasher, a short but mean blade of stone embedded with dozens of diamond chips and made deadly with Majika, and was forced to leave several minor wounds upon the nearer ruffians before commanding their respect and keeping them at bay. Marching toward the red marble tower that housed the government of Parappa only 100 feet away, Redfern was grateful that Sertan had come to visit, but the short trek could otherwise have proven fatal for the bewildered wizard. Even Ellen's presence, her form translucent and ghostly in the mid-afternoon sun, was not enough to keep the mob away, and the unsympathetic crowd continued to jeer and harass the two prisoners all the way to the tower, showering them with curses, stones, and spittle. Finally reaching the entry chamber of the great marble tower, Sertan led Redfern and Ellen through its guarded doors, quickly putting distance between themselves and the furious citizens. Simple yet ornate, the large chamber and first level of the tower contained little in the way of furniture, but instead was cloaked with dozens of large tapestries depicting past events within both Parappa and Mariga. Redfern had always found this place quite interesting, the only portion of the tower accessible to the general public, and he again admired the many fine murals and depictions hanging from the low ceiling of the large area. Ellen seemed quite impressed with the chamber as well, but was unable to see much as Sertan quickly marched the group to the spiral staircase at the far wall of the room and beyond.
Though I didn't get much of a chance to study the murals, I could tell that the people and culture around me was much more sophisticated than I originally thought. At least I was in a civilized society.
Climbing the dozens of stairs to Lord Robert's palace room, Sertan quietly led his captives past several more guards before entering the stately chamber. The depressed leader of the city was inside, with Gepin Norenvel standing at both sides of him. "My lord, I bring to you Redfern," Sertan stated, smiling before taking a few steps back to allow full view of the bound wizard. Ellen was standing so close to Redfern that she nearly passed through his body. Robert, Vel, and Gepenor all appeared intrigued with the pair, and especially with Ellen. But the Supreme Healer Priest wanted very much to pass judgment against the young wizard, and immediately stepped in his direction, condemning Redfern before all within the court. Apprentice Redfern, or should I say, First Guard, the priest began, mocking the bound hero. You have been indicted as the Angel of Death, the sole instigator of our misery, and the thief of the shard of life. What do you have to say?
There he is, the miserable wizard. There's the true Angel of Death. It has to be him. Once he's convicted and cast into Gemcore, all our problems will be at an end. Dear Sisla, help me with this.
Not realizing that the cleric would officially indict the captured wizard so quickly, Robert at first wanted to retract Gepenor's statement, but decided instead to carefully observe Redfern's reaction. The wizard looked from Nora to Robert to Vel, trying to remain calm but sensing a very real danger if the situation wasn't handled in just the right way. Supreme One, Redfern began, responding to the priest's accusations with honest dignity. I don't know how these vicious rumors started, but I'm innocent and... Redfern began to stutter out of respect for the stately men, taking great care not to appear as a transgressor of the almighty code. And what, apprentice? Vel questioned, suggesting that the wizard continue. With utmost respect, I find this whole situation ridiculous. Vel slowly shook his head in agreement, but both Nora and Robert found the comment inappropriate, if not arrogant. The lord of the city stiffened in his throne, his deep-rooted anger welling up as Gepenor moved to within inches of Redfern in an attempt to intimidate the young wizard with further words of accusation and mistrust. Your own father warned us, just before the execution of Sandris, that you were his first guard, and were planning to help destroy our great city. After you fled Josephine to escape justice, you returned to the Everroot Forest and summoned more Benzars from the Onyx Ruins. Confess your sins, and perhaps we'll send you to Gemcore instead of the stake. Not sure which was worse, Redfern could only turn away, the accusations now so ridiculous that he realized he didn't have anything to worry about. Drawing a deep breath, Redfern turned back to Gepenor and delivered a response that bordered on sheer mockery. First of all, my father ordered me to go with him. We didn't escape. And we didn't go to the Everroot but to Jugoria, to become ultimates, which I detested. Second, I won my rebirth only a short time ago, long after the Benzars began attacking again. And third, if you remember, the first guard was a Gurak. I'm obviously human. Oh? Questioned the healer priest, detecting Redfern's mockery and responding with further cynicism. Gurak wizards are experts at shapeshifting. Should we open you up and find out? Vel sadly shook his head at the comment, embarrassed by the ridiculous tactics chosen by the healer priest. Growing tired of the interrogation, Redfern turned directly to Robert in an effort to resolve the situation once and for all. My lord, my father Rex was a terrible, corrupt man, a victim of the Nemerfood, but I did my best to uphold the code of the land and fulfill my duties as his son. My father liked Sandris, I guess, and I'm not surprised to learn he made it seem I was her first guard, and that we would one day return for some sort of revenge. But I assure you, I've just returned from Mount Rebirth, an honorable wizard of Naraga, and I'm in no way connected with the Benzars. In fact, I would help you defeat them if given the chance. So where did you encounter this spirit? Robert finally asked, examining the translucent woman. Redfern looked at Ellen before responding. I met her just this afternoon outside of Josephine. She was standing near some foul piece of machine, something technicky, I guess. I think she was made this way by the machine, and lost her ability to communicate as well. Ellen slowly realized that everyone in the room was talking about her, but decided not to try and say anything. Extremely intrigued by the spirit, Vel cautiously stepped toward Ellen in order to better examine her. I know she looks like a spirit, but I don't think she is, Redfern concluded as Vel reached her, the latter wizard carefully passing his hand through the woman moments later. Vel had obviously never encountered such a being before, and was truly confounded by Ellen's presence and physical appearance, shrugging before returning to the side of Lord Robert once again.
This is strange, very strange. Yes, she appears to be a genuine spirit of the land. My hand passes through her without any effort. Yet she appears far too young to have achieved attainment.
Redfern turned from Ellen back to Nora. Anyway, I've been gone from Josephine for over a year, so I can't possibly be the one you're looking for. But can you prove all this? Queried Gepinor, still unconvinced of the young man's innocence. I don't possess the power to create Benzars or even control them. I'm not even quite sure what they are. That doesn't answer the question, shouted Robert, frustrated with the interrogation. We have to know. We have to be certain. The commandment sparked a sudden idea, and Gepinor turned back to Redfern and offered a very serious alternative. If this young apprentice wants us to believe him, perhaps he should take the oath to Sisla. All eyes turned to Redfern, as if he had suddenly admitted his own guilt. Redfern recognized the procedure and was struck with revulsion, quite insulted by the suggestion. Deeply disturbed by the turn of events as well, Vel quickly tried to protect the younger wizard. This is enough, he cried, pleading for Gepinor to retract the suggestion. The Merrigan people have already stolen enough dignity from the Reborn. Leave this new wizard with some decency. Your reputation is just, retorted the overweight priest. You think you can do anything you want with your Magicka, don't you? There are many honorable wizards throughout Mariga, including 2 standing right here. Besides, you know the oath can kill him if he lies. His mind unchanged, the healer priest looked into the eyes of Redfern and continued. We all know the consequences, don't we, Redfern?
He knew the oath was a sacred vow to Sisla herself, an oath that, if slandered or unkept, would start his body to rot, resulting in agonizingly slow and painful death.
A heavy dread fell over Redfern, accompanied by an intense anger that threatened to totally consume him, and he couldn't help but remember his deceased father, who had placed him in several similar situations in the recent past. But as everyone waited for some type of response, Redfern realized that the situation was not a curse after all, but an opportunity, a chance to prove his innocence once and for all, even if under less than honorable conditions. After glancing at Sertan for a moment and winning a quick smile and nod of approval, Redfern turned back to Gepinor and approached him with searing eyes and a condemning heart, bordering on breakage of the code. I swear to Sisla that if I lie, may she cause me to wither and die.
Now, boy, it's up to you. Either jump or take the Nema fruit. The choice is yours.
Now, wizard, it's up to you. Either take the oath or be cast into Gemcore. The choice is yours.
Each word was articulately spoken, with distinction and authority, as if the wizard were relishing the moment. Heavy silence filled the air, and several guards looked around for signs of divine intervention. But nothing happened, and Redfern continued to stare into the wide, mistrusting eyes of the priest. A game of wills the young wizard was actually winning. Gepinor finally turned and backed away, defeated and upset that a mere apprentice had made him look bad in the eyes of Robert. With little honorable recourse, the Lord himself ordered the guards to untie Redfern, Surtan only too happy to obey the request. "Am I free to go now, my lord?" the wizard asked, his innocence more than proven before the court. "Yes, of course," the Lord nearly whispered. "Forgive us, Redfern, but we had to know." Redfern turned toward the door in his anger, wishing to be miles away from the encounter. But then a noble thought occurred to the young hero, a chance for a wonderful opportunity, he felt, and so Redfern decided to let his anger go and instead turned back to Robert, his tone proud and respectful. "My lord, as I just said, I am recently reborn wizard, and I would gladly welcome the opportunity to serve my homeland. Is there anything I can do to help Josephine?" Robert straightened himself, surprised by the offer, but just as willing to take it. Indeed, Redfern's query had sparked an idea within the tortured lord, and Robert wasted little time initiating a wholly spontaneous plan. "You have indeed proven your innocence here," he began, a slight grin on his face. "But there are those within the city who will continue to blame you, hate you, perhaps even try to destroy you. By helping our city, you can also help restore your good name within Josephine and all of Parappa." Both Vel and Gepinor looked quite surprised by Robert's sudden suggestion, especially the healer priest, who normally dominated the Lord's decision-making process. "How can I help?" Redfern politely asked. "As you may have already heard, the Shard of Life was stolen from the Sislin Church 3 nights last, despite all our efforts to use and protect the sacred artifact. Would you consider questing for it?" "That would be strongly ill-advised," Val immediately interjected, speaking on behalf of the Circle. "Without direct approval from the Inner Circle, such a quest could very well be construed as yet another serious violation of the Code." "The arrogant fools!" Gepinor screamed, throwing his hands into the air in revulsion. "Are you telling us we can't even help ourselves?"
"Anyone else providing her with assistance shall be in direct violation of the Code, and will pay with their life for their insolence."
"Supreme One, I've already been warned that if any of us intervene, we will be destroyed for our insolence. The Circle must retain control, regardless of the present situation. My lord, if we act now, all of us, even I, will be at the mercy of the Circle." Robert stared in Vel's direction for several long moments, surprised and bitterly disappointed by the news. But Redfern still saw the moment as a personal opportunity and boldly presented his own opinion. "My lord, with the Vegual ruined and the shards stolen, Josephine will surely fall to the Benzars now. If I'm not allowed to quest for the relic, there won't be anyone left within the city for the Inner Circle to discipline."
This is it. What I've been dreaming of all my life. I agree that the Circle is all-powerful, but surely they won't mind if I recover the shard and bring peace to Josephine. Surely they would approve of such a noble and heroic quest.
I remember how strange my words sounded, telling an entire country to stand by and let itself be destroyed so that the Circle could remain appeased. It was then that I began to wonder perhaps the circle had outlived its usefulness. That perhaps now truly was the time for change.
The Lord slowly shook his head, agreeing with Redfern. Gepinor also agreed, now siding with the man he had just been trying to destroy. Continuing to ponder the situation, Robert turned back to Vel, about to issue his ultimatum. Remember, Vel, I understand your position, but I can't sit by and watch as this land, which I myself took the oath to serve and protect, is slowly destroyed because of the convictions of a few old wizards. I must act, and act now. I know, Vel softly replied, humbled by the experience. I can't comprehend the intentions of the Circle either sometimes, and I also fear they will not act soon enough to prevent the fall of Josephine. Despite my position, despite everything I've been led to understand, perhaps this time the Circle is simply wrong, and we must do what we know is right.
Yes, what we knew was right. Even though death is the ultimate failure in life, I was prepared to do what was ever necessary to prevent the fall of Josephine. Even though I knew that my sanctioning of this quest was the equivalent of a death sentence for me.
Nearly stunned by the admission, Robert then slowly nodded in agreement before turning back to Redfern, about to set his precarious plan into motion. All right, Wizard, go and quest for the shard. Gather your heroes tonight and depart for the Evil Root Forest by sunrise. Of course, if you succeed, the city of Josephine will reward you with a lifetime's contentment.